When you hear this, turn the page.
Hello and welcome to TheReadBack. We are reading Michael Jackson's Moonwalk. We are on the third chapter. This book was written in 1988. Let's see what was going on in 1988. WWW, which is the World Wide Web, was, I think, introduced, or, we kind of started knowing or using it more. Global warming was global warming warning was introduced in that year. Reagan was the president. Bush 1 was elected in November of that year. The Cosby Show, CDs outsell records for the first time. What else happened? Raymond was journaling how grody to the max Charlie Babbitt was. We were letting our soul glow watching Coming to America. We were also watching Big, Tom Hanks, and NWA Straight Outta Compton was out then, and so was, I think, Guns N' Roses sing Sweet Child of Mine. Yes, with Axl Rose, with that dance that he does. So while all this was going on, Michael Jackson was writing Moonwalk. So we begin chapter 3. Well, first, the recap of chapter 2 was after the Motown audition. They did their cartoon. They started their tour. Michael Jackson talks about being mobbed and some of the awful things his father had done to them as kids. I guess kind of giving you more of a look at their relationship. His relationship with Berry Gordy and Motown and Diana Ross. They lived down the street from each other, Diana Ross and Berry Gordy. And they were shuffled between the houses, I guess, to to record their records, and probably to keep an eye on them and to mold them the way that they wanted them to be, to show them things, give them access to things so that they could continue to possibly be satisfied with the record company, I guess, and keep them working 24/7, which the kids probably didn't understand at the time, but that's probably what was going on. And yes, they went on tour, and he did a soundtrack. He did Ben for the movie Ben. I don't remember that. I don't even know if I was born then. I remember the song later because it was on a commercial. Back then we had commercials where they advertised of albums with different songs on them. So it was like a not a collab, different songs all on one album, tape, later on CD. And they would have these commercials that they would play that would advertise these records with all of these multi hits on them. And that was one of them. And I remember seeing that commercial, but Michael was older. When I saw the commercial, they showed a picture of him as a child singing that song, but I remember Michael Jackson being an adult. So maybe it was an oldie but goodie record. So I don't remember the movie Ben, but I remember the song from that commercial. So that was chapter 2 pretty much. If you need more, you can watch the reading of chapter 2. But right now, we are continuing with chapter 3 of Michael Jackson's Moonwalk. Dancing Machine is the name of the chapter. Chapter 3, Dancing Machine. The media writes weird stuff about me all the time. The distortion of the truth bothers me. I usually don't read a lot of what's printed, although I often hear about it. I don't understand why they feel the need to make up things about me. I suppose if there's nothing scandalous to report, it's necessary to make things interesting. I take some small pride in thinking that I've come out pretty well, all things considered. Well, this, well, yeah, I guess during the Jackson 5 times. But he did write this in 1988. So some things had happened by then, but not like the really big things. So up to this point, yes, he had, skated through that unscathed, per se, all things considered, in his words. A lot of children in entertainment business end up doing drugs and destroying themselves. Frankie Lyman, Bobby Driscoll, any of a number of child stars. Any of a number of child stars. And I can understand their turning to drugs considering the enormous stresses put upon them at a young age. It's a difficult life. Very few manage to maintain any semblance of normal childhood. I myself have never even tried drugs. No marijuana, no cocaine, nothing. I mean, I haven't even tried these things. Forget it. Wow. This isn't to say we were never tempted. We were musicians doing business during an era when drug use was common. It's still common. Way more common than you probably think. Outside of business. And I guess during the 80s, a lot of movies showed business people doing drugs. Like it was a recreational thing. Like cocaine was in all of the movies. Now, as a child, no, I did not see cocaine, you know, like that. But in the 80s, a lot of the movies portrayed cocaine as like a rich person's drug, like a party drug. People would do it to get loose or kind of like, I guess, when you take a drink, maybe. But it was known as, it was expensive. So it wasn't something that everyone did, or everyone as in the common people, I guess. You had to have money. Now, to get it, no, I don't think you had to know anybody special to get it. The drug dealer, which wasn't hard, it wasn't hard to get. It was just, it was expensive. So, yeah. And a lot of the musicians, actors, people in Hollywood, people, on Wall Street, executives, anyone who was in that fast-paced life that had the money seemed to do cocaine. Now, weed was more common. But the hard drugs, maybe I lived a kind of a sheltered life because we didn't really see that. Like heroin and things like that. Maybe if I lived in like New York, like a city, a hard city like that, maybe. But we didn't see that. Now, we saw it in the movies. We saw people shoot up, things in the movies. But as far as I knew, heroin, it was a drug, but there were people that went to work and did heroin. There were people, they called them functioning addicts. They did these drugs and they were able to live some sort of life. And it came across to us that the drugs were used to relax, like to cut the stress, relax a little bit, kind of like when people take a drink. It was just illegal, which at one point alcohol was too. So Mike said that he didn't have it. But the more of these books that I have read and the magazine articles and, throughout the years, a lot of these people in these areas often speak of drugs. And they say at parties and the clubs, there was drugs everywhere. So I guess this is what he means when he says this isn't to say we were never tempted. We were musicians doing business during an era when drug use was common. And the 80s was a, the big, well, I'm not going to say it was the big drug dealing time, but it was a lot of soldiers that were in Vietnam that had gotten hooked on certain drugs and they had connections and they got really, really pure stuff over here. And, drugs built Miami, helped to build Miami. Miami was or Florida. Florida was a retirement state. So, yeah, the 80s was flashy. And if you had money, that was a status thing to have cocaine because only wealthy people seem to have it. It was flashy, it was colorful. The music was pumping, club scenes, all kinds of things were happening in 88. Drive-bys, from the highs to the lows. Same thing that's going on now went on back then. I don't mean to be judgmental. It's not even a moral issue for me, but I've seen drugs destroy too many lives to think they're anything to fool with. I'm certainly no angel, and I may have my own bad habits, but drugs aren't among them. That's good, Mike, because crack came out then too, with Reagan and, you know, him funding the Iran Contra thing, supposedly. So, yeah, it turned ugly. By the time Ben came out, we knew we were going to go around the world. American soul music had become as popular in other countries as blue jeans and hamburgers. We were invited to become a part of that big world, and in 1972 we began our first overseas tour with a visit to England. Though we'd never been there before or appeared on British television, people knew all the words to our songs. They even had wide scarves with our pictures on them and Jackson 5 written in big, broad letters. The theaters were smaller than the ones that we were used to playing in the United States, but the enthusiasm from the crowds was very gratifying as we'd finish each song. They didn't scream during the songs the way the crowds did back home, so people over there could actually tell how good Tito was getting on the guitar because they could hear him. A lot of this was the time when we had fan clubs. Do you guys remember that? When you would send a certified check or money order to the fan club and wait patiently every day. Some people never got their fan club material, and you'd get a newsletter, a poster, a button, maybe sometimes exclusive music. It depends. And you were part of the fan club. And you would get things that said, I'm part of the fan club. Maybe tickets to concerts would come, or you could have access to buy them sooner than others. Maybe there was a contest or something you could win, or maybe you could meet the artist if you were part of the fan club. And it was just a really exciting time. And when you would see pictures of people, they would have their fan club gear on, or either you'd ask them, hey, where'd you get that shirt? Oh, I got it from the fan club. It was you felt exclusive. So, and it was something that we kids could do, and the adults, it was just for us. So yeah, it was just for us. We took Randy along because we wanted to give him the experience and allow him to see what was going on. He wasn't officially part of our act, but stayed in the background with bongos. He had his own Jackson 5 outfit, so we introduced him. People cheered. The next time we came back, Randy would be part of the group. I had been the bongo player before Randy, and Marlon played them before me, so it had become almost a tradition to break the new guy on those crazy little drums. We had 3 years of hits behind us when we toured Europe that first time, so there was enough to please both the kids who followed our music and the Queen of England, whom we met at a Royal Command performance. That was very exciting for us. I had seen photographs of other groups like the Beatles meeting the Queen after Command performances, but I never dreamed we'd get the chance to play for her. England was our jumping off point, and it was different from any place we'd been before. But the farther we traveled, the more exotic the world looked. We saw the great museums of Paris and the beautiful mountains of Switzerland. Europe was an education in the roots of Western culture and, in a way, prepared a preparation for visiting Eastern countries that were more spiritual. I was very impressed that the people there didn't value material things as much as they did animals and nature. For instance, China and Japan were places that helped me grow because these countries made me understand there was more to life than the things that you could hold in your hand or see with your eyes. And in all of these countries, the people had heard of us and liked our music. That's very true. That's very true. Very true. Especially in Japan. They value landscape, art, even their food, the way they plate things, the plates that they plate them on have like a story. You go to restaurants and the dinner is a story based on nature and the way things move, and it's really interesting. A lot of things that we eat here aren't even permitted over there. So when you're watching all of your overseas bloggers and they come here and they're like, oh wow, we don't have this and we don't have that, and oh, we don't, da, da, da. Yeah, because it's some bullshit, that's why. And they come here and get fat. People say that, we came over to the US and got fat because of all of the things in our food, and we are farther from nature, it seems. But yeah, he's right about that. Australia and New Zealand, our next stops, were English speaking, but we met people who were still living in tribes in the outback. They greeted us as brothers, even though they didn't speak our language. If I'd ever needed proof that all men could be brothers, I certainly had it during that tour. Also, was it Richard Pryor? I think he went to the Louvre and he said, way in the back, there were pictures of Africans. Like, it wasn't out in the front, like African kings and things like that, and statues and things that they were hiding, and that he went to different places in different countries and he saw, I don't know what to call them, but they were dark skinned and they had curly hair and they were like tribes. They weren't in the city, in the general population with everyone else. It seems like they were hidden. But he said that there are more people. He couldn't speak to them either, but he said we are more alike than we are different. You just have to look. And then there was Africa. We had read up on Africa because our tutor, Miss Fine, had prepared special lessons on the customs and history of each country we visited. We didn't get to see the prettier parts of Africa, but the ocean and the shore and the people were unbelievably beautiful near the coast where we were. We went to a game reserve one day and observed animals roaming wild. The music was eye-opening too. The rhythms were phenomenal. You can see where he gets some of his inspiration for You Want to Be Starting Something. That sounds like African tribal beats. When we first came off the plane, it was dawn and there was a long line of Africans dancing in their native costumes with drums and shakers. They were dancing all around welcoming us. They were really into it. Boy, it was something. What a perfect way to welcome us to Africa. I'll never forget that. And the craftspeople in the marketplace were incredible. People were making things as we watched and selling other things. I remember one man who made beautiful wood carvings. He'd ask you what you wanted, and you'd say a man's face. And he'd take a piece from a tree trunk, slice it, and create this remarkable face. You could watch him do it right before your eyes. I'd just sit there and watch people step up to ask him to make something for them, and he'd do this whole thing over and over. That's why I don't understand when people go overseas to buy Gucci and Prada and designer things, Chanel. I guess because it's made over there. But why would you spend that kind of money when you can go to Savile Row and get a bespoke suit, a handmade shoes, that are made just for you that nobody else will have. I'd rather pay money for that. But, then you would have to maintain a certain weight because if you pay that kind of money for custom made outfit, then you'd have to wear it. But what I'm told is that they give you allowance for a fabric allowance, so seams can be moved, they can be extended or retracted. But I would much rather pay for something like that than go buy something that everybody else has. And you probably would pay more, but it would be just for you. But it seems like everybody wants to be the same now anyway, so don't do it, because then they're going to drive up the prices, and by the time I get there, it's going to be outrageous. So don't do it. Buy the other stuff so I can go get my stuff at a decent price. But yes, you go places and they make things. They make clothes, they make fabrics, they weave fabrics, they make shoes, and you just don't see that here. You don't even see shoe shiners here anymore. I used to see people men getting their shoes shined. You getting clothes tailored. I don't see it as much over here anymore. But I think Mike said this was 1972, so. It was a visit to Senegal that made us realize how fortunate we were and how our African heritage had helped us to make us what we were. We visited an old abandoned slave camp at Gore Island, and we were so moved. The African people had given us gifts of courage and endurance that we couldn't hope to repay. I've heard that too, that when you go to Africa, to some of the slave ports, that you feel like an emotion comes over, like something comes over you. So I don't know if it's the spirit of what was going on or if it's your imagination because you're there. I don't know, but I've heard that. I guess if Motown could have had us age the way they wanted us to, they would have wanted Jackie to stay the age he was when we became a headline act and have each of us catch up with him. Although I think they'd have wanted to keep me a year or so younger so I could still be a child star. That may sound nonsensical, but it really wasn't much more far-fetched than the way they were continuing to mold us, keep us from being a real group with its own internal direction and ideas. This is horrible. But this is business. This is business. And these are people's lives, but it's still business. We were growing up and we were expanding creatively. We had so many ideas we wanted to try out, but they were convinced that we shouldn't fool with a successful formula. Who is they? That's what I want to know. I always hear that they said that they wouldn't want to, that they said that we wouldn't want to see these types of movies. They said that we don't want to listen, we don't want to hear this type of music. Who is they? I want to know who that is, and how are you telling me what I like and don't like? We were growing up and we had expanded creatively. We had so many ideas that we wanted to try out, but they were convinced that we shouldn't fool with a successful formula. At least they didn't drop us as soon as my voice changed, as some said they might. It got to the point that it seemed there were more guys in the booth than there were on the studio floor at any given time. They all seemed to be bumping into one another, giving advice and monitoring our music. Our loyal fans stuck with us on records like I Am Love and Skywriter. These songs were musically ambitious pop recordings with sophisticated string arrangements, but they weren't right for us. Sure, we couldn't do ABC all our lives, but that was the last thing we wanted. But even the older fans thought ABC had more going for it, and that was hard for us to live with. During the mid-70s, we were in danger of becoming an oldies act, and I wasn't even 18 yet. Wow, and he wasn't even allowed to do anything else. So if they had dropped him right then, he wouldn't have had any skills to do anything, to get a job, go to school. I mean, I guess he could have gone to school, but it would have been hard because He's Michael Jackson, number one. And that is so out of his element to be at a college, and would he have been up to par because he was schooled differently? But they didn't even allow him to do any of those things, learn stuff at the studio, so he could have gotten a job there or something. It's they don't. It's weird. When Jermaine married Hazel Gordy, our boss's daughter, people were winking at us saying that we'd always be looked after. But they ain't know Jermaine because Jermaine been married about 3-4 times since then. Maybe not 3 or 4, maybe 2. Indeed, when Get It Together came out in 1973, it got the same treatment from Barry that I Want You Back had gotten. It was our biggest hit in 2 years. Though you could have said it was more like a bone transplant than the spanking little baby that our first hit was. Nevertheless, Get It Together had good, tough, low harmony, a sharp wah-wah guitar, and strings that buzzed like fireflies. Radio stations liked it, but not as much as the new dance clubs, discos, but not as much as the new dance clubs called discos did. Motown picked up on this and brought back Hal Davis from the Corporation days to really put the juice into Dancing Machine. The Jackson 5 were no longer just the backup group for the 101 strings or whatever. A lot of people felt the pressure of disco. So you'll see a lot of R&B groups, rock groups have disco albums all of a sudden because there were clubs and they played that type of music. And if you're in the club and you hear that music back in the day, you wanted it. And so you'd go buy it if you heard it and you liked it. But how were you going to hear it? It was either on the radio or in the clubs. And if you heard it both places, then that just drilled it home that you needed it. So a lot of even jazz singers and stuff had disco records. It's really funny. Look it up if you weren't around to remember these things. Motown had come a long way from the early days when you could find good studio musicians supplementing their session pay with bowling alley gigs. A new sophistication turned up in the music on Dancing Machine. That song had the best horn part we'd worked with yet, and a bubble machine in the break made out of synthesizer noise that kept the song from going completely out of style. Disco music had its detractors, but to us it seemed our rite of passage into the adult world. And disco was fun. People still play disco music now. Disco was fun. Disco was a lot about drugs, though, so that lets you see what was going on around that time if you listen to those songs. But yeah, it was about fun. Sex, they talked about that too. Getting high, but the beat, it just made you want to dance. I love Dancing Machine. Love the groove and the feel of that song. When it came out in 1974, I was determined to find a dance move that would embrace the song and make it more exciting to perform, and I hoped more exciting to watch. So when we sang Dancing Machine on Soul Train, I did a street-style dance move called the Robot. That performance was a lesson to me in the power of television. Overnight, Dancing Machine rose to the top of the charts, and within a few days it seemed that every kid in the United States was doing the Robot. I had never seen anything like it. Motown and the Jackson 5 could agree on one thing. As our act grew, our audience should too. We had 2 recruits coming up. Randy had already toured with us, and Janet was showing talent with her singing and dancing lessons. What? Janet was showing talent with her? Janet, come on, Janet. Now, he's talking about Janet was showing talent. Janet is the bomb now. But this was back in the day when she was little. We couldn't put Randy and Janet into our old lineup any more than we could put square pegs into round holes. I wouldn't insult their considerable talent by saying that the show business was so in their blood that they just took their places automatically as if we'd reserved a spot for them. Oh, so Mike is saying it's not automatic that you get in. You gotta prove that you can get into this. So it's not a rite of passage just because you're a family member. You got to show something before you can get in this. Okay. This is a business. They worked hard and earned their places in the group. They didn't join us because they ate meals with us and shared our old toys. Oh, okay, Mike. If you just went by blood, I'd have as much crane operator in me as singer. You can't measure these things. Dad worked us hard and kept certain goals in sight while spinning dreams at night. Just as disco might have seemed like a very unlikely place for kids, just as disco might have seemed like a very unlikely place for a kids group to become a grown-up act, Las Vegas with its showcase theaters wasn't exactly the family atmosphere that Motown had originally groomed us for, but we decided to play there just the same. There wasn't much to do in Las Vegas if you didn't gamble, but we thought of the theaters in the city as just big clubs with the club hours and clientele of our Gary and Southside Chicago days, except for the tourists. Tourist crowds were a good thing for us, since they knew our old hits and would watch our skits and listen to new songs without getting restless. It was great to see the delight on their faces when little Janet came out in her Mae West costume for a number or two. I remember that. And she used to do that on, well, I don't remember this, but I remember she used to do it on Good Times. And they had a TV show, I want to say. And I remember seeing reruns of that, and she would come out in that outfit. It was really funny. We had performed skits before in a 1971 TV special called Going Back to Indiana, which celebrated our Gary homecoming, the first time we all decided to return. Our records had become hits all over the world since we'd seen our hometown last. Maybe that was the show. I thought they were on a show with somebody else, or that they had their own show. I don't know. I don't remember. I just remember seeing reruns of it, like way later. It would come on really late at night, or come on a Saturday, or maybe on a holiday when there wasn't a lot on TV, and it would be on like the B stations, like what you call now Fox and the WB. I don't know what it's called now, but those channels, we would see stuff like this. Sometimes Channel 8, the public access channel, sometimes we would see like these old performances. But yeah, I thought they had a TV show, but I think they were on a show with Cher. I think she had a variety show. Maybe the Carol Burnett show. I'm not sure. But I thought they had their own show because the Osmonds had a show. But like I said, a lot of these things I watch reruns. I didn't watch them when they were live, so I don't know. But I remember seeing them doing skits and things like that. So maybe it was this going back to Indiana. But this was before my time. It was even more fun to do the skits with 9 of us instead of just 5, plus whatever guests happened to appear with us. Our expanded lineup was a dream come true for Dad. Looking back, I know Las Vegas shows were an experience I'll never recapture. We didn't have the high pressure concert crowd wanting all our hit songs and nothing more. We were temporarily freed from the pressures of having to keep up with what everyone else was doing. We had a ballad or two in every show to break in my new voice. At 15, I was having to think about things like that. Wow, you were having to think about losing your damn job. That is a lot of pressure, especially when you are the breadwinner. Because let's face it, without Michael, I don't think we would be watching the Jackson 5. Maybe for a song or two, but then it's like, okay, where's Mike? We want Mike. So that's a lot to have on your shoulders. Not to take away from them, because everybody knew how to play their part. But we'd watch Michael without them. I don't know if we'd watch them without Michael. Let me say that's, my opinion. There were people from CBS television at our Las Vegas shows, and they approached us about doing a variety show for the upcoming summer. We were very interested and pleased that we were being recognized as more than just a Motown group. Over time, this distinction would not be lost on us. Because we had creative control, our Las Vegas review, because we had creative control over our Las Vegas review, it was harder for us to return to our lack of freedom in recording and writing music once we got back to Los Angeles. Wow, they kept them in a box, didn't they? We'd always intend to grow and develop in the musical field. That was our bread and butter, and we felt we were being held back. Sometimes I felt we were being treated as if we still lived in Berry Gordy's house, and with Jermaine now a son-in-law, our frustration was only heightened. So people thought that him marrying Hazel Gordy was giving them a meal ticket, and Mike said it was making it hard to breathe around there, making them frustrated, making them 38 hot. By the time we began putting our own act together, there were signs that other Motown institutions were changing. Marvin Gaye took charge of his own music and produced his masterpiece album, What's Going On. Stevie Wonder was learning more about electronic keyboards than the experienced studio hired guns. Stevie Wonder was learning more about electronic keyboards than the experienced studio hired guns. They were coming to him for advice. One of our last great memories from our Motown days is of Stevie leading us in chanting to back up his tough, controversial song, You Haven't Done Nothing. Though Stevie and Marvin were still in the Motown camp, they had fought for and won the rights to make their own records and even to publish their own songs. Motown hadn't even budged with us. To them, we were still kids, even if they weren't dressing us and protecting us any longer. See, that's what happens when you get experience. That's why people want young. They want young because they figure you don't know anything. But if you understand what's going on, you can use them like they use you. You get in there, you learn about what's going on, you see, you pay attention, you just don't go in there and work, because once you're no longer profitable to them, they're going to let you go. So you need to learn whatever you can from your surroundings, and that's when they don't want you anymore. When they see that you know what time it is and you see that you're being used, and then you want to renegotiate things and do things differently, then they don't want to deal with you because just the saying is, don't let them see, because then they'll know. If you keep people in the dark and keep, throwing cars and women or men, whatever, people at them, money at them, status at them, then they'll be cloudy to what's going on, and they'll never really understand the machine behind it. And once you understand all of that, they don't want you anymore, because then you know how to play the game, and then you're on a level playing field with them, and they're no longer using you for max profit. Our problems with Motown began in 1974 when we told them in no uncertain terms that we wanted to write and produce our own songs, which means that they would get more money too and more control. Basically, we didn't like the way our music sounded at the time. We had a strong competitive urge, and we felt we were in danger of being eclipsed by other groups who were creating a more contemporary sound. And even now you hear that. Like when you hear Christina Aguilera, Destiny's Child, Britney Spears, these people were singing these hits or these songs that people wrote for them. And then when they finally broke out and said, now I can do what I want to do, now I can sing the music that I really want to sing. And they hope that the fans like it, because we have been so accustomed to the machine that is making the music. And it's not necessarily what the artist wants, but sometimes they just do whatever, so that they can get their foot in the door, get their fan base, and then they just hope that when they come out singing and looking different, that you accept it. And sometimes you'll catch an interview where they will say, I'm finally doing the music that I want to do. I'm not doing the bubblegum stuff that the record label wants me to do. I'm finally living my life the way that I want to. Motown said, no, you can't write your own songs. You've got to have songwriters and producers. They not only refused to grant our requests, they told us it was taboo to even mention that we wanted to do our own music. What? Shut up. Now, they told these people to shut up, basically, and don't tell anybody, because they're going to look at you weird. No, they're not. They're going to look at y'all like, yeah, do it. It's probably people in the background saying, do it. They don't want you to do it, but you go ahead. You do what you come on. That's what you want to do. You want to make the big bucks. You want to be more in control. Do it. But the record company is telling you to be quiet. Don't tell anybody. Don't ever tell anybody that you thought anything like that. Shut up. These people. Let me finish reading. I really got discouraged and began to seriously dislike all the material Motown was feeding us. See? They didn't discourage Mike. I'm glad he kept going, because then we wouldn't have the legend that is Michael Jackson. So shame on y'all for doing that. Eventually, I became so disappointed and upset that I wanted to leave Motown behind. When I feel that something is not right, I have to speak up. I know most people don't think of me as tough or strong-willed, but that's just because they don't know me. Eventually, my brothers and I reached a point with Motown where we were miserable, but no one was saying anything. That is horrible, that you do not want to go to work. My brothers didn't say anything. My father didn't say anything, so it was up to me to arrange a meeting with Berry Gordy and talk to him. Why y'all ain't get Jermaine to do it? Y'all was talking about Jermaine was all up in there. He had married the man's daughter and everything. Why y'all didn't get him to do it? Or maybe he was too much of a punk. He didn't want to do it because, hey, they say don't ish where you sleep. So that could have been talks for him during business hours, but then he had to go home and deal with that. So, yeah, never mind, Jermaine. I'm sorry. I was the one who had to say that we, the Jackson 5, were going to leave Motown. I went over to see him face to face, and it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. If I had been the only one of us who was unhappy, I might have kept my mouth shut. No, don't keep your mouth. That's why everybody else is keeping their mouth shut. But there had been so much talk at home about how unhappy we all were that I went in and talked to him and told him how we felt. I told him I was unhappy. I think they went to Epic, because a lot of the Jackson albums that I had said Epic on them, I think. Remember, I love Berry Gordy. I think he's a genius, a brilliant man who's one of the giants of the music business. I have nothing but respect for him, but that day I was a lion. I complained that we weren't allowed any freedom to write songs and produce. He told me that he still thought we needed outside producers to make hit records. But I knew better. Yeah, tell him, Mike. Barry was talking out of anger, and he was talking out of his you-know-what, and his pocket, because he figured if y'all knew your power, then he wouldn't have any more. That was a difficult meeting, but we were friends again, and he's still like a father to me, very proud of me and happy about my success. No matter what, I will always love Barry because he taught me some of the most valuable things I've learned in my life. He's the man who told the Jackson 5 that they would become part of history, and that is exactly what happened. But I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, a lot of these record companies don't like for you to leave because they feel that they've put so much into you. That's why these contracts are so, you can't leave, or you owe them so much money, because they feel that which may be some truth to it, but I think they should just chalk it up to business, that you cultivated this act. You got them where they are, you styled them, you paid the money to put them out there, and the advertisement and the hits and the tours, and then all of a sudden, now that they're famous, they want to leave you. So, but to me, that seems like that's just the way of business. And you should do whatever you can do to keep them if that's the goal. So if they want to write and produce, let them write and produce. So what? You don't make 50 million from them. You might make 20 million, but I mean, still, you've got happy artists who will continue to do things for you, and they can grow within the company and write music for other people and bring in new acts, and that all sounds too much like right. So back to the book. Motown has done so much for many people over the years. I feel we were fortunate to have been one of the groups Barry personally introduced to the public, and I owe enormous thanks to this man. My life would have been very difficult without him. We all felt that Motown started us, supporting our professional careers. We all felt our roots were there, and we all wished we could stay. We were grateful for everything that had we were grateful for everything they had done for us, but change is inevitable. I am a person of the present, and I have to ask, how are things going now? What's happening now? What's going to happen in the future that could affect what happened in the past? That I think about that stuff too, Mike. What's happening? What's happening? What am I doing now that's going to change things for me in the future or not change things for me in the future? So, if all record companies operated with a moral compass, then first of all, it'd be a much better place. People would be happier. We wouldn't have dead artists, and strung out artists. And even if we did, the record company would care for them instead of just throwing them away. The money would be spread out a little more. And people don't like that. Seems like people are greedy and they want it all. They don't want anybody to have any of it. And that is so sad to me that you can't. I mean, you're already a millionaire. You already have control. You already have the status. Why you can't teach other people? Why you can't pass the torch? Why you can't, Mary Kay it up and just be the person at the top and just have everybody else do the work, and you can sit at home. Maybe you're not going to make 100 million, but you might make 70 million. I mean, why do you have to have it all? I don't understand. I just don't understand. Everybody got their hand in the pot. It's weird. And nobody wants anybody to have any. It's important for artists always to maintain control of their lives and work. There's been a big problem in the past with artists being taken advantage of. I just said that. I've learned that a person can prevent that from happening by standing up for what he or she believes is right, with concern for the consequences. Yep, because there's always going to be consequences. And a lot of people are afraid of those consequences. And they don't want them. So they just continue to, like Prince said, be a slave to the music companies. We could have stayed with Motown, but if we had, we'd probably be an oldies act. Can you imagine that? That Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 would be doing like little juke joints and playing in grocery store parking lots? Wow. I'm glad they left. I knew it was time for change, so we followed our instincts and we won when we decided to try for a fresh start with another label, Epic. I knew it. I knew Epic was on some of those records that I had. We were relieved. We were relieved that we had finally made our feelings clear and cut the ties that were binding us. But we were also really devastated when Jermaine decided to stay with Motown. I don't know why he was with that lady daughter. He wasn't finna go nowhere. Because like I said, that would have gone back to the house. Work would have extended into his entire life. And he did not want to deal with that. And I'm sure that was not coincidence that he got into that family. Both ways, that Barry got into the Jackson family and Jackson family got into Motown. So maybe Jermaine had his ulterior motives, and Barry, of course, we know he had his. So we know Jermaine wasn't finna go nowhere. And it's interesting, to read all this. I read it years ago, but to read this, because I would hear the adults talk about it, especially when Motown 25 came out and they actually were on stage together. It was like a big deal, and I'm like, I don't understand why is this a big deal? But now seeing that they had all these falling outs and, disagreements and things, that it probably was a big deal for them to be on stage together. And I had a picture from, I believe it was Right On magazine. It was a fold out of them on Motown 25 that I had on my wall. He was Barry's son-in-law, and his situation was more complicated than ours. He thought it was more important for him to stay than to leave, and Jermaine always did as his conscience told him, so he left the group. And he had some hits. I liked some of Jermaine's songs. He was not as charismatic as Michael. He was very boring on stage. His face just kind of looked like it didn't move at all. He always looked like he had just eaten a Sour Patch Kid or something. But I liked his songs. I liked a couple of those songs. And the videos were epic. I believe Iman was in one of those videos. It was good. I mean, his songs were good. A couple of his albums. Nothing like Michael, but he held his own. I clearly remember the first show we did without him because it was so painful for me. Since my earliest days on stage and even in our rehearsals in our Gary living room, Jermaine stood at my left with his bass. I depended on being next to Jermaine. And when I did that first show without him there, no one next to me, I felt totally naked on stage for the first time in my life. So we worked harder to compensate for the loss of one of our shining stars, Jermaine. I remember that show well because we got 3 standing ovations. We worked hard. I wonder how Jermaine felt when he saw that. That they got 3 standing ovations without you. When Jermaine left the group, Marlon had a chance to take his place, and he really shone on stage. My brother Randy officially took my place as bongo player and the baby of the band. Around the time Jermaine left, things were further complicated for us because of the fact that we were doing a stupid summer replacement TV series. It was a dumb move to agree to do that show, and I hated every minute of it. Oh, Mike, I need to go look at that so I can see. If I could see it in your face. I had loved the old Jackson 5 cartoon show. I used to wake up early on Saturday mornings and say, I'm a cartoon. But I hated doing this television show because I felt it would hurt our recording career rather than help it. I think a TV series is the worst thing an artist who has a recording career can do. I kept saying, but this is going to hurt our record sales. And the others said, no, it's going to help them. They were totally wrong. See, Mike say, I know what time it is. I know what's going on. They were totally wrong. We had to dress in ridiculous outfits and perform stupid comedy routines to canned laughter. It was all so fake. Maybe this was the show that I thought I remembered seeing. Because I thought it was like more than one show, like it was their show, but I don't know. Mike said it was fake. It was all so fake. We didn't have time to learn or master anything about television. We had to create 3 dance numbers a day trying to meet a deadline. The Nielsen ratings controlled our lives from week to week. If you guys don't know what the Nielsen ratings are, it is a way of scale of rating how many people watched a show, how many people watched during certain times and certain days, so that the shows with the highest Nielsen ratings were the ones who got paid more and they got more seasons added because there showed interest that people were watching and what they were watching, what time they were watching, what day they were watching, all of that. We always thought that, well, we didn't know, like, how was Nielsen figuring this out? Was it in our televisions? Like, how did they know what we were watching? And then later on, there were Nielsen boxes that used to go on top of they were like little small boxes. So I don't know if they chose people in certain areas for these boxes, or like who had the Nielsen boxes. I don't know. But those were the Nielsen ratings. I am outside in the rain and I'm getting a little stopped up, but we are almost through with this chapter a little bit. Halfway through. We didn't have time to learn or master anything about television. We had to create 3 dance numbers a day and trying to meet a deadline. The Nielsen ratings controlled our lives from week to week. I'd never do it again. It's a dead-end road. What happens is partly psychological. You are in people's homes every week and they begin to feel they know you too well. You're doing all this silly comedy to canned laughter, and our music begins to recede into the background. When you try to get serious again and pick up your career where you left off, you can't because you're overexposed. Bloggers, this is what's going on. I think when you see your favorite blogger and you see them out and you run up to them and you know everything about them, realize these people don't know you. That's very scary for someone to run up on you and how's your mom? How's the baby? How's the job? Oh, I heard about your boyfriend. Your sister, are y'all speaking again? And how was that trip? Oh, you look so fun and you lost weight and you had surgery. And these people are looking at you like, and your name is? They don't know you. So, but it's it's overexposure. It's overexposure. And it just seems like there's no where to go from there because except for more exposure. So people know more about you. And when you don't tell somebody about you, these people that feel like they know you are like really pissed that you didn't tell them. Just tell us you had surgery. Why? Then people don't have to tell you. They tell you what they want to tell you. They're not obligated to tell you anything. So this was happening back in the day on TV with Mike. People are thinking of you as the guys who do the silly, crazy routines. This too. Just like Nene on Housewives. Everybody wanted the, bloop, and they wanted her to come and act that way and snap her fingers and roll her neck. And when she tried to break into real acting and Broadway and be serious, nobody wanted that. They wanted her to be, the Bougetto Nene. And even child stars, it's hard for them to break out of, what do they call it? Typecasting. That you're just this certain kind of person every role you have. I can see this, that you do things and you get famous for it, and then people expect you to act that way all the time when that's really not you, it's just an act. One week you're Santa Claus, the next week you're Prince Charming, another week you're a rabbit. It's crazy because you lose your identity in the business. The rocker image you had is gone. I'm not a comedian. I'm not a show host. I'm a musician. Okay, Mike. Mike say I am not no funny man. I'm not Steve Harvey. Well, Steve Harvey ain't even Steve Harvey, but I'm not, Mr. Funny Man. I'm not Bob Barker. I am Michael Jackson, a musician. That's why I've turned down offers to host the Grammy Awards and the American Music Awards. Oh, and we used to wonder that. We was like, why we can't get Michael Jackson? Mike said they asked me and I told him no. It's really entertaining for me to get up there and crack a few jokes and force people to laugh because I'm Michael Jackson, when I know in my heart that I'm not funny. People that know Michael Jackson say he is kind of funny. He and Prince were funny, but I don't, being funny and then getting on stage is, and being a comedian is something totally different. So I understand. Mike say he was staying in his lane, but that's interesting that they offered him those things, and we always wondered, why. Well, we thought he was like really shy, and that's why he didn't take it. But he's saying that he didn't take it because it was all fake and he didn't want to do it. Okay, Mike. Thank you. After our TV show, I can remember doing theaters in the round where the stage didn't revolve because if they had turned it, we would have been singing to some empty seats. I learned something from that experience, and I was the one who refused to renew our contract with the network for another reason. I just told my father and brothers that I thought it was a big mistake, and they understood my point of view. I had actually had a lot of misgivings about the show before we started taping it, but I ended up agreeing to give it a try because everyone thought it would be a great experience and very good for us. And that's another bad thing about being in a group, that you have to think about everybody else. Even though you're the star and you know that this is some bullshit, you still have to do it because they need to put food on the table, and without you, they feel that they wouldn't have anything, which might be true, might not be true. Try something, you know, learn something, be in another lane. There's a lot of groups where people, like Solange wrote things, she choreographed things. A lot of people don't know that. And she sang background. You know, she did a lot of things she learned while she was in that environment. So, but some people just want to be on that stage. They say it's nothing like it when you walk out on the stage and there's like thousands of people cheering and the lights are on, and you know everything you say they do is, they say it's nothing. That rush is like incredible. So maybe some people just want that. But yeah, when you're in a group, you got to think about everybody. So yeah, Mike said I'll give it a try, but just some. Now I see like all of the disagreements and things that they had, and they probably knew that without him they wouldn't make as much money as they would with him. So they needed him to be on board for these things. They needed him. People would not come see them without him. So they could go on tour, they could do TV shows, but people would constantly be asking, where is Mike? Where is Mike? Because even with the Victory album, I don't think he wanted to do it. I think there were rumors that he didn't want to do it. And most of the songs on Victory, he was not singing lead. The ones that he sang lead or had a more of a leading part, like State of Shock, was a hit. Some of those other ones were not. But I think he did it because the family needed it. And you could kind of tell that he would just come in, you know, and even his parts, you know, are like the Pimp C parts. It's like you couldn't wait, you know, for the Michael Jackson part to come on of whatever song it was. So, but I had not the State of Shock, the Victory tape, and I went to the Victory tour. I'm speaking from my point of view. And it just seemed like he wasn't like all over the record like the regular Jackson's albums. It seemed like he just kind of came in and was like, doo-doo-doo, you know, okay, doo-doo-doo, you know, and you would hear a song and be like, that's Mike in the back. In the back. But the ones that he led or had a more leading role on, we knew. And we knew all of Mike's parts. We couldn't wait for his part to come on. And there were some songs where we didn't hear him at all. So that's why I don't. This is a lot. And I think this dude said he was what, 18? I don't know how old he is now. Less than 21. And he's got all this work under his belt and all of this weight on his shoulders. And doing stuff that he really didn't want to do. But he did it because the family was like, they ain't gonna do it without you, so we need to put food on the table and you gotta do it. The problem with TV is that everything must be crammed into a little space of time. You don't have time to perfect anything. Tight schedules rule your life. If you're not happy with something, you just forget it and move on to the next routine. I'm a perfectionist by nature. I like things to be the best they can be. I want people to hear or watch something I've done and feel that I've given it everything I've got. I feel I owe an audience that courtesy. On the show, our sets were sloppy, the lighting was often poor, and choreography was rushed. Somehow the show was a big hit. There was a popular show on opposite us, and we beat them out in the Nielsen's. CBS really wanted to keep us, but I knew that show was a mistake. As it turned out, it did hurt our record sales, and it took us a while to recover from the damage. When you know something's wrong for you, you have to make difficult decisions and trust your instincts. I rarely did TV after that. The Motown 25 special is the only show that comes to mind. Barry asked me to be on that show, and I kept trying to say no, but he finally talked me into it. Yeah, now that I can, Barry need a pat on the back for that, because if it wasn't for Motown 25, that performance, I don't know. I'm not going to say that he wouldn't have catapulted, but he wouldn't have catapulted from that point, because we couldn't wait, everybody, like from our parents to the kids, because they had the Temptations, the Tops, groups that hadn't been together for years on there for the adults, and they had DeBarge and Michael and people like that were on for the younger audience. And if you had a VCR, you had his set, and we had his set. We taped the whole 25, Motown 25, but it was always set to Mike's part. Like, so whenever you would watch it, you just rewind it and turn it off. So when you came back, it would be queued up for Mike. And an interesting thing is the jacket that he wore, he said was Catherine's. It was part of some, like, after five dress set that she had. It was like an evening jacket. And who knew that was his mother's jacket he was out there moonwalking in? Just, solidified everything, that image. I wonder if she still, I bet she does. She should, unless they donated it somewhere. Because I would have asked for it back. Now, give me back my damn jacket to my dress set. What am I going to wear? What am I going to cover my shoulders with? I need that jacket back, Michael. I told him I wanted to do Billie Jean, even though it would be the only non-Motown song on the show, and he readily agreed. Of course, because he knew what time it was. He knew it was getting ready to be something. And yeah, it was a bunch. Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye, all those people were on there that people hadn't seen for years, because we didn't have the internet. So we had to wait for these people to show up so that we could see them, or either wait to see them in a magazine, or wait for an interview, or maybe a video at this point. But for the most part, things weren't on demand like that. We had to wait. So to see them singing live was a treat for people who didn't get a chance to ever go to any of these concerts, and they got to actually see it for free on TV. So he knew. And he knew that the Jacksons singing Jackson 5 hits, it was not going to work without Mike. So they might as well just scrap the Jackson 5. And if you're doing a Motown 25, you can't do it without the Jackson 5. So I'm glad Mike went on ahead and said yes. Billie Jean was number one at the time. My brothers and I really rehearsed for the show. I choreographed our routines, so I was pretty wrapped up in those numbers. But I had a good notion of what I wanted to do with Billie Jean. I had a sense that the routine had worked itself out in my mind while I was busy with other things. I asked someone to rent or buy me a black fedora, a spy hat. And the day of the show, I began putting the routine together. So he put that iconic routine together the day of the show. Isn't that something? And he did all of that choreography with them pointing and hunching on their back and all of that. We know that. All of us who watched Motown 25 knew that routine, because we were up doing it with them after we had rewound that tape and watched it 1,000 times and tried to do the moonwalk. And some of us succeeded. Some of us, like me, did not. But you couldn't tell me that I couldn't moonwalk. I thought I was moonwalking. But other people were like, no, that's not it. You're not doing it. I'll never forget that night, because when I opened my eyes at the end, people were on their feet applauding. I was overwhelmed by the reaction. It felt so good. This little boy right here is how we felt when they came on. And I believe that he had this reaction when the Jacksons came on. But this is how we all felt at home watching it. It was like it, I can't even explain the feeling of watching it live. Now, you watch it now, I don't know if you feel the same, but with us watching it, it was something. And like I said, I had this on my wall. It was a fold out from a Right On magazine that was he and Jermaine together. And I just put it on my wall because it was Michael Jackson and it had the glove in it. And I remember watching the show. I had no idea what type of impact this picture had because of what Michael is saying, was going on between the brothers. So, yeah. I want you back. Everybody, come on. Woo! Woo! When we played tag in grade school, I wanted to be in. I changed the road with just a back, found how you quit. We grew up to change it, promise for money, just like back in grade school, doing the same old. Only break during the Motown to Epic switch was the TV show. While that was all going on, we heard that Epic had Kenny. Oh, while that was all going on, we heard that Epic had Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff working on demos for us. They were told we'd be recording in Philadelphia after our shows were all done. These guys wrote a lot of songs. They called them like the Philadelphia sound. You kind of know it if you hear it, the sound, but they were pretty big and are still. I believe they're still alive. They've written a lot of songs, a lot of hit songs over the years. If there was anyone who stood to gain the most from switching labels, it was Randy, who was now part of the Five. But now that he finally was one of us, we were no longer known as the Jackson 5. Motown said that the group's name was the company's registered trademark and that we couldn't use it when we left. That was hardball, of course, so we called ourselves the Jacksons from that time on. And see, this is what I'm talking about, business. You don't want them to take the name. You don't want, because you feel like you put so much money into it. You made it. You didn't do it. Like G Money said, you didn't do all this by yourself. Yeah, you did your part and we did our part. But now they want to, it's our property. You can't have it. And all of this. So it's business. It's just, they only see you as act number whatever. It's business. Those people don't care. They don't care that that's your name, and then at the time you probably signed it away because you didn't know that you were going to be the, ninth wonder of the world. So I guess everybody takes a risk. The record company takes a risk. They don't know if they're going to make their money back. You take a risk. You don't know what's in store for you at that record company, what you're going to have to do to get things done. So, I don't know. Dad had met with the Philly guys while negotiations were going on with Epic. We'd always had great respect for the records that Gamble and Huff had overseen. Records like Backstabbers by the OJs, If You Don't Know Me By Now by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes featuring Teddy Pendergrass, and When Will I See You Again by the 3 Degrees, along with many other hits. They told Dad they'd been watching us and they said they wouldn't mess with our singing. Dad mentioned that we were hoping to have a song or two of our own included in the new album, and they promised to give them a fair hearing. We'd gotten to talk with Kenny and Leon and their team of people, which included Leon McFadden and John Whitehead. They showed us what they could do for themselves when they made Ain't No Stopping Us Now in 1979. Dexter Wanzel was also a part of this team. Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff were such pros. I actually got a chance to watch them create as they presented songs to us, and that helped my songwriting a lot. Just watching Huff play the piano while Gamble sang taught me more about the anatomy of a song than anything else. Kenny Gamble is a master melody man. He made me pay close attention to the melody because of watching him create, and I would watch too. I bet you did. Mike said he watched everything. He learned so much. I'd sit there like a hawk, observing every decision, listening to every note. They'd come to us in our hotel and play a whole album's worth of music for us. That's the way we'd be introduced to the songs that they had chosen for our album. Aside from the 2 songs we were writing ourselves, it was an amazing thing to be present for. And that's, I mean, it's hard for me to see that you have an album, but I guess that's what you're hired to do. You're hired performers. Because how do you have an album? I mean, it's just like somebody painting my house and they decide that they want to paint it blue. And I'm like, no. Well, I'm the painter, so I can choose what color I want it to be. Like, what kind of mess is that? If I'm paying for the paint, how do you make a record and you just, yeah, well, we'll think about it? What? I don't understand. It's just a part that I guess it's in contracts, and I don't know. I don't understand. And I know that you can't let people everybody has to have a role. And you can't just let people just do what they want to do and run, wild. But you can't, I don't, because I'm saying that, and as I'm saying it, I'm understanding, well, yeah, every artist that came through can't say, well, I want this on the record and I want that on the record. And, because they're doing it for personal reasons. These people that are paying for this record to be made are doing it to make money. So you coming around here with these foolish ideas, so they think it's not going to make them money. It's going to waste money because they're paying for you to do this mess in the studio and to press it on a record and to sell it and pay the record stations payola to play them, pay the DJs and the clubs to play them. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I would feel if somebody just said that to how I think about it. How you gonna, okay. We had cut some demos of our songs at home during our breaks from shooting, but we decided to wait on those. We felt there was no sense putting a gun to anyone's head. We knew that Philly had a lot to offer us, so we'd save our surprise for them later. Yeah, you're in Philly, you with Gamble and Huff, learn all that you can and see what happens. So I can see Mike, doing that. You're in a position where you're there in a very spectacular position. So take in. Don't ripple, don't wave, nothing. Just take all that you can, and then you can go back, use the experience that you got to put out what you want. Our 2 songs, Blues Away and Style of Life, were 2 hard secrets to keep at the time because we were so proud of them. Style of Life was a jam that Tito directed, and it was in keeping with the nightclub groove that Dancing Machine got us into, but we kept it a little leaner and meaner than Motown would have cut it. Blues Away was one of my first songs, and though I don't sing it anymore, I'm not embarrassed to hear it. I couldn't have gone in this business. I couldn't have gone on in this business if I had ended up hating my own records after all that work. It's a light song about overcoming a deep depression. I was going for the Jackie Wilson lonely teardrops way of laughing on the outside to stop the churning inside. And Babyface said once, a long time ago, and I think Neo said it too, that they write songs about what is going on in people's lives. Like they talk to you. That's how a lot of these artists and producers have relationships, because they spend so much time one on one talking about their feelings and tapping into that and writing these songs. So when songs would come out and we would be like, okay, like who is hitting on Janet? Who is, because when she wrote the Velvet Rope, we was ready to go get that man. We was like, who is mistreating you like this? What is going on? Brandy, I forgot what song she wrote, and we were ready to, probably about Wanye, and we was ready to go tear somebody up, not physically, because these people these days, but we were ready to not listen to you, not buy your records, not watch your movies, any of those things, because you had hurt our artists. But when they would interview the artists, they would say, oh, these are just songs. People write them and we just sing them. But the producers and the writers of the songs are like, no, these songs are about what they're going through. Now, maybe it's a exaggerated version of it, but they tap into that. So for Mike to say that it was about overcoming a deep depression, like, wow. And this kid wasn't even 25. Like, what? Worked and got you like this? Like, damn. When we saw the cover art for the Jacksons album, the first we cut for Epic, we were surprised to see that we all looked alike. Even Tito looked skinny. I had my crown afro then, so I didn't stick out so much, I guess. Still, once we performed our new songs like Enjoy Yourself and Show You the Way to Go, that's my jam. I love Show You the Way to Go. I like Enjoy Yourself too. People knew I was still second from the left, right out in front. Randy took Tito's old spot on my far right, and Tito moved into the old place Jermaine had. It took a long time for me to feel comfortable with that, as I've mentioned, though it was through no fault of Tito's. I love those two songs. Those were cool. And if you notice, which people around my age or during this time, the best part of the song, and it's a name for it, I don't know what the name of it is, I can't remember the name of it, it's at the end. Like when you're playing your record and it's fading, like the best ad libs are, if you listen to any DeBarge songs, L goes off at the fade, and I'm like, why did y'all turn it down at that point? So you just got to turn it up and sing along, but Show You the Way to Go is one of those. Now, Enjoy Yourself like shuts off. It doesn't fade. It's like a note and then it just stops. But Show You the Way to Go fades out. So go get it or download it or look it up and turn it up at the end and listen to Mike go off at the end. But anyway, back to the book. Those two singles were fun records. Enjoy Yourself was great for dancing. It had rhythm guitar and horns that I really liked. It was also a #1 record. For my taste, I leaned a little more toward Show You the Way to Go because it showed what good regard the Epic people had for our singing. We were all over that record, and it was one of the best we did. I loved the hi-hat and the strings fluttering along us like birds' wings. I'm surprised that song in particular wasn't a bigger hit. I'm surprised too, because it had a lot of melodies. Like I don't know if it sounded like birds, but I have to listen to it again and see if I can hear what Mike is talking about. But it was very melodic, very strings, and sounded like an orchestra behind them kind of. It was really nice. I like that song. Though we couldn't spell it out, we kind of hinted about our situation in a song called Living Together, which Kenny and Leon chose with us in mind. If we were going to stick together, we've got to be a family. Have yourself a real good time, but don't you know it's getting late? Those are in quotes, so those must be the lyrics of the songs. The strings pointed and thrust like they did in Backstabbers, but that was a Jackson's message, even if it wasn't in the Jackson style yet. Gamble and Huff had written enough songs for another album, but we knew from experience that while they were doing what they did best, we were losing some of our identity. We were honored to be part of the Philly family, but that wasn't enough for us. We were determined to do all of the things we had wanted to do for so many years. That's why we had to go back to our Encino studio and work together again as a family. I think that's the same place that Jafar practiced or learned or whatever for the Jackson movie. Going Places, our second album for Epic, was different from our first. There were more songs with messages and not as many dance songs. We knew that the message to promote peace and let music take over was a good one, but again, it was more like the old OJ's Love Train, and not really our style. We knew that the message to promote peace and let the music take over was a good one, but again, it was more like the old OJ's Love Train and not really our style. Still, maybe it wasn't a bad thing that there was no big pop hit on Going Places because it made Different Kind of Lady an obvious choice for club play. It was positioned in the middle of side one, so there were two Gamble and Huff songs sandwiching it, and our song stood out like a ball of fire. That was a real band cooking, with the Philly horns giving it one exclamation point after another, just as we'd hoped. That's the feel we were trying for when we were making demos with our old friend Bobby Taylor before going to Epic. Kenny and Leon put the finishing touches on it, the icing, but this one we'd baked the cake ourselves. After Going Places was in the stores, Dad asked me to accompany him to a meeting with Ron Alexenberg. Ron signed us for CBS, and he really believed in us. I guess that was the next album because I remember seeing Epic and I did remember seeing CBS on some of those records. So now they had left Epic Records and they were on CBS. Boy, it's a lot of contract switching around here. I wonder how much money those people made every time they switched the contract, because I know, well, I don't know, but I'm assuming that they had to buy them out because they say the record business is deadly. It's a lot going on. After Going Places was in stores, Dad asked me to accompany him to a meeting with Ron Alexenberg. Ron signed us for CBS and he really believed in us. We wanted to convince him that we were ready now to take charge of our own music. We felt that CBS had evidence of what we could do on our own, so we stated our case, explaining that we'd originally wanted Bobby Taylor to work with us. Bobby had stuck with us through all those years, and we had thought he'd be a fine producer for us. Epic wanted Gamble and Huff because they had the track record, but maybe they were the wrong jockeys or we were the wrong horses for them because we were letting them down in the sales department through no fault of our own. We had a strong work ethic that backed up everything we did. So I wonder if doing the show for CBS was a move because they wanted to sign with CBS. Because it's probably all the same, you know, the broadcasting company, the record company. So for them doing that variety show on CBS, I wonder if they talked about that and said, well, maybe we can use our relationship there to get out of this Epic. Mr. Alexenberg was certainly used to dealing with performers, although I'm sure that among his business friends, he could be just as cutting about musicians as we musicians could be when we were swapping our own stories amongst ourselves. But Dad and I were on the same wavelength when it came down to the business side of music. People who make music and people who sell records are not natural enemies. I care as much about what I do as a classical musician, and I want what I do to reach the widest possible audience. The record people care about their artists. And and they want to reach the widest market. As we sat in the CBS boardroom eating a nicely catered lunch, that's what I'm talking about. Feed me. If you're going to take some money from me, at least feed me well. We told Mr. Alexenberg that Epic had done its best and it wasn't good enough. We felt we could do better, that our reputation was worth putting on the line. Yeah, so maybe that was because Mike said he was always looking to see what move could move him, take him to the next level. So maybe them accepting doing that show was like under Epic's nose. You know what I mean? Like, well, you don't have a television station, so we can't do this with you. We have to do it with Epic. But I mean, we have to do it with CBS. But Epic got money from that, of course, because that's their artist being featured, on that broadcasting network. But for them to have this type of meeting, yeah, Mike was thinking ahead. When we left that skyscraper known as Black Rock, Dad and I didn't say much to each other. The ride back to the hotel was a silent one, with each of us thinking our own thoughts. There wasn't much to add to what we had already said. Our whole lives had been leading to that single important confrontation, however civilized and overboard it was. It says above board. Okay. Our whole lives had been leading to that single important confrontation, however civilized and above board it was. Maybe Ron Alexenberg has had reasons to smile over the years when he remembers that day. When that meeting took place at CBS headquarters in New York, I was only 19 years old. See, that is a lot. I was carrying a heavy burden for 19. Say it again, Michael. I was carrying a heavy burden for 19. My family was relying on me more and more as far as business and creative decisions were concerned, and I was so worried about trying to do the right thing for them, but I also had an opportunity to do something I'd want to do all my life, act in a film. Ironically, the old Motown connection was paying a late dividend. This sounds like Tony Braxton too. Tony Braxton has said a lot, I just want to do something for me. Why do I have to do everything with the family? I want to do something for me. But then it did pay off because she had her sister singing background. And when they quit, the background dancers didn't know what to do. And she was like, yeah, if I get my sisters back here, they know me, we're in sync. They know the routines, blah, blah, blah. But she has said that she wanted to do something just for her without them. But they wanted her. I believe that show. They wouldn't do it without Tony. She had to sign on to it. She was the Michael. I mean, it kind of turned out that everyone blossomed on that show, including Tamar. But in the beginning, she was the star. So I don't think we would have watched the show with the Braxtons. Just like we didn't really like the record. I didn't want to say that, but now I always liked Tamar. I remember when her album came out, when I saw it in the record stores, I thought it was Tony at first because it was just a big picture of her face. But she can really sing. Not saying that the rest of them can't, but she can really sing. So it's a lot, I guess, to have to move in a manner that benefits everyone, even though it may stifle what you want to do. And sometimes I guess that's what you got to do for family. I guess. Seem like your family would want you to do what you want to do, and maybe they would take the back seat. Or offer to work for you, maybe. I don't know. But it's both ways. Michael feels a way about his family depending on him, but they need to manage their money and know that it's good. I mean, I don't know if it's ever going to end, but you should behave like it's going to end, even if it never ends. You don't know that. And you can't keep asking this man to compromise himself because you lost all your money at the racetrack or you blew it on some hoes or something. Come on now. That man needs to do what he wants to do. But they probably feel like without us, you wouldn't be who you are. So you owe us. But when does the owing end? I don't know. Motown had bought the rights to the Broadway show known as The WIZ, even as we were leaving the company. The Wiz was an updated, black-oriented version of the great movie The Wizard of Oz, which I had always loved. Yes, the Wizard of Oz used to come on TV, and it would come on like around Christmas time, because I think it had something to do with Christmas. And it would come on every year, just like The Sound of Music would come on, and, certain other musicals like that. And it would come on, and we would all watch it, or it would just be on because it was during the holidays. So usually, your family was there, school was out. So would you sit and watch it? Maybe the first time, but then it kept coming on every year. So you kind of knew what was going to happen, but it would be on, like the TV would be on and that would be playing. And, depending on what was going on, you'd watch it. But that was back in the day. I don't think they do that anymore because you can watch it anytime. And you can buy it to watch it if you want to. I remember that when I was a kid, The Wizard of Oz was shown on television once a year and always on Sunday night. Yep. Kids today can't imagine what a big event that was for all of us because they've grown up with video cassettes and the expanded viewing that cable provides. Yeah, see, I guess I should have just kept reading. I said the same thing. I had seen the Broadway show too, which was certainly no letdown. I swear I saw it 6 or 7 times. I later became very friendly with the star of the show, Stephanie Mills, the Broadway Dorothy. I told her then, and I've always believed since, that it was a tragedy that her performance in the play could not have been preserved on film. I cried time after time. As much as I like the Broadway stage, I don't think I'd want to play on it myself. When you give a performance, whether on record or on film, you want to be able to judge what you've done, to measure yourself and try to improve. You can't do that in an untaped or unrecorded performance. It makes me sad to think all of the great actors who have played roles we would give anything to see, but they're lost to us because they couldn't be or simply weren't recorded. If I had been tempted to go on stage, it would probably have been to work with Stephanie, although her performances were so moving that I might have cried right there in front of the audience. Motown bought The Wiz for one reason, and as far as I was concerned, it was the best reason possible: Diana Ross. Now, I remember when Diana got this role, and everybody was saying, a lot of the critics were saying, that she was too old. She looked too old to play Dorothy. But whatever she had going on with Barry, he was like, whatever. He put her in that. He put her in Lady Sings the Blues. People were saying, she didn't look anything like Billie Holiday. They put her in Mahogany. She was a star of all of these roles, of all of these movies. And she was pretty good. After we saw it, we were like, oh, okay. Well, I didn't see it because they were rated R. And I don't even know if I was around when Lady Sings the Blues came out. But I think maybe when Mahogany came out. I think. Or maybe I was a baby. I don't remember. But I've seen them later and I owned some of them. And my parents had the soundtracks to them, the records. So we would listen to the music all the time. But yeah, every role that she was in, it was always some type of controversy. But whatever she had going on with Barry Gordy, he put her front and center of all of those movies. So she has a chain of movies that are starring her. And she was dressed fabulously. She looked fabulous. Her acting was cool. But I do remember The Wiz and people saying that she was not Dorothy, that she looked too old to be playing like a teenager, because I believe that's what Dorothy was, like a young child. I don't think she was even, maybe she was 16 or something like that. But yeah, we went to see the WIZ. My mom took me to see the WIZ. She was very excited to see it. That Lena Horne was in there, and Quincy Jones made an appearance, and you could hear everybody in the audience when they would come on screen. You could hear everybody, whoa, woo, or look, and that type of thing. And Nipsey Russell, which I found out later that she had actually met because we have his autograph on something. So I didn't know that then, but you know, I could see why she was excited. I wish I had known, because I would have sure asked, what you doing? How you met Nipsey Russell? Well, what's going on? Where were you to get this autograph? But she told me she had met Diana Ross when she was pregnant with Rhonda, Barry's baby. So I don't know what my mom was doing. I know that she traveled a lot. She went to school. She got her master's. She did a lot of things. She worked a job. She made an honest living. She was married, but there's a lot of other stuff. I'm like, where did you see Diana Ross backstage? What you was doing backstage? Backstage from where? But we don't talk about that kind of stuff. Because whatever. But yeah, it was a big deal with her. And that she looked too old to be Dorothy. Dinah was close to Berry Gordy, who had her loyalties to him and to Motown and to Rhonda. Well, he didn't say that. I said that. But she did not forget us just because our records now had a different label on them. We had been in touch throughout the changes, and she had even met up with us in Las Vegas, where she gave us tips during our run there. Diana was going to play Dorothy, and since it was the only part that was definitely cast, she encouraged me to audition. She also assured me that Motown would not keep me from getting a part just to spite me or my family. She would make sure of that if she had to, but she didn't think she'd have to. And, Mike was... how do we know that Barry didn't, like the people in the back in the day said, sick Diana on him? How do we know that this was an organic meeting? I mean, come on. Everybody has their motives. So if you've watched The Wiz and you think of the time, or if you were living during that time, I don't think there would be anybody else out that could have played the Scarecrow. Like, I can't think of anybody that would have played the Scarecrow. I don't know. So I don't know if this was so just, yeah, you should try out. Yeah, Michael, you should try out. Or if Barry said, get over there and get him to sign that paper so we can make this movie. I don't know. She didn't. Well, let me go back. She would make sure of that if she had to, but she didn't think she'd have to. She also assured me that Motown would not keep me from getting a part just to spite me or my family. She would make sure of that if she had to, but she didn't think she'd have to. She didn't. It was Berry Gordy who said he'd hoped I'd audition for The Wiz. See? It ain't that he hoped. He sent that woman over there to get you. I was very fortunate he felt that way because I was bitten by the acting bug during that experience. I said to myself, this is what I'm interested in doing when I have the chance. This is it. Yeah, because they kept you working. So you couldn't explore other opportunities to do anything. So yeah, take it. Do it. When you make a film, you're capturing something elusive and you're stopping time. You are right about that. The people, their performances, the story become a thing that can be shared by people all over the world for generations and generations. Right, because we can watch The Wiz right now. Imagine never having seen Captain's Courageous, I've never seen that, or To Kill a Mockingbird. Making movies is exciting work. Has anybody ever seen Captain's Courageous? Maybe I need to watch it. Mike said it's a good movie. It's such a team effort, and it's also a lot of fun. Someday soon, I plan to devote a lot of my time to making films. I auditioned for the part of the Scarecrow because I thought his character best fit my lifestyle. I was too bouncy for the Tin Man and too light for the Lion. Mike say I'm too light to be a lion. So I had a definite goal and I tried to put a lot of thought into my reading and dancing for the part. When I got the call back from the director, Sidney Lumet, I felt so proud, but also a little scared. The process of the film was new to me, and I was going to have to let go of my responsibilities to my family and my music for months. I had visited New York, where they were shooting, to get the feel for Harlem that the Wiz's story called for, but I had never lived there. I was surprised by how quickly I got used to the lifestyle. I enjoyed meeting a whole group of people I'd always heard about on the other coast but had never laid eyes on. Making the Wiz was an education for me on so many levels. As a recording artist, I already felt like an old pro, but the film world was completely new to me. I watched as closely as I could and learned a lot. And he probably excelled, and those people probably didn't like that. Because Mike seemed like one of those people that catch on to stuff quick. He go in there, he watch you, and then turn around and he can do it. And you be looking around like, okay, young buck, hold on. I don't know how old he was here, but, you know. So, yeah, Mike seems like he watches, perfects, and executes. During this point in my life, I was searching both consciously and unconsciously. I was feeling some stress and anxiety about what I wanted to do with my life now that I was an adult. I was analyzing my options and preparing to make decisions that could have a lot of repercussions. On who, Mike? On your family? Oh, this is too bad. I'm feeling the pressure just reading this. Being on the set of The Wiz was like being in a big school. My complexion was still a mess during the filming of the movie, so I found myself really enjoying the makeup. It was an amazing makeup job. Mine took 5 hours to do, 6 days a week. We didn't shoot on Sundays. Yeah, everything was closed on Sundays. We finally got it down to 4 hours flat after doing it long enough. The other people who were being made up were amazed that I didn't mind sitting there having this done for such long periods of time. They hated it, but I enjoyed having the stuff put on my face. When I was transformed into the Scarecrow, it was the most wonderful thing in the world. I got to be somebody else and escape through my character. Oh, see, this is Mike is it's so much pressure that he just liked escaping life. Kids would come to visit the set, and I'd have such fun playing with them and responding to them as the Scarecrow. I think if I was a kid, I'd be scared if I saw somebody like that. In real life walk up to me. I'd always pictured myself doing something very elegant in the movies. But it was my experience with the makeup and costume and prop people in New York that made me realize another aspect of how wonderful filmmaking could be. I also loved the Charlie Chaplin movies, and no one ever saw him doing anything overtly elegant in the silent movie days. I wanted something of the quality of his characters in my Scarecrow. I loved everything about the costume, from the coil legs to the tomato nose to the fright wig. Now, I thought his nose was a Reese's cup. Maybe they changed. I don't know. That's what I thought. It was like a wrapper that was on his nose. I even kept the orange and white sweater that came with it and used it in a picture session years later. The film had marvelous, very complicated dance numbers, and learning them was no problem. But but that in itself became an unexpected problem with my co-stars. Ever since I was a very little boy, I've been able to watch somebody do a dance step and then immediately know how to do it. See? Mike is an observer and he executes. He takes it in, he watches, he takes it in and does it. Another person might have to be taken through the movement step by step and told to count and put this leg here and the hip to the right. When your hip goes to the left, put your neck over here, that sort of thing. But if I see it, I can do it. When we were doing The Wiz, I was being instructed in the choreography along with my co-stars, the Tin Man, the Lion, and Diana Ross. And when they were getting mad at me. I couldn't figure out what was wrong until Diana took me aside and told me that I was embarrassing her. See, this is what I'm talking about. Why you can't just, you're well, let me not say you mediocre, but you're not as good as he is. And there are other things that you do that he's not that good at. So how is he embarrassing you? Because he can catch the steps. He's a performer. He's a dancer. We ain't never seen Diana Ross do no complicated dance steps with the Supremes. Have we? Please tell me. I haven't seen it. So we don't expect you to get out there and Chris Brown it up. I mean, come on now. So they're going to make him feel bad and make him push his star down because they can't do it. Okay, Mike, let me finish reading this because I'm getting pissed off. Diana took me aside and told me that I was embarrassing her. It's me dancing embarrassed you, or you having a baby from a marriage? Okay. Embarrassing Diana Ross? Me? She said she knew I wasn't aware of it, but I was learning the dances much too quickly. It was embarrassing for her and the others, who just couldn't learn steps as soon as they saw the choreographer do them. And I think Ted Ross was on Broadway. You know, I mean, I don't know. Diana's talking, so maybe she was the one that was more upset. Then the rest of them didn't come to him. Or maybe they sent her because she was closest to him and they figured that because, you know, she had his heart, that she could tell him to tone it down. But no, don't dim my star because yours not shining bright enough. It was embarrassing for her and the others who just couldn't learn the steps as soon as they saw the choreographer do them. She said he'd show us something and I just go out there and do it. Then why don't you go and spend some quality time with him and let him teach you instead of telling him not to shine? That's crazy as hell. When he asked the others to do it, it took them longer to learn. We laughed about it, but I tried to make the ease with which I learned my steps less obvious. So you dimmed your light for them. I also learned that there could be a slightly vicious side to the business of making a movie. Often when I was in front of the camera trying to do a serious scene, one of the other characters would start making faces at me trying to crack me up. I had always been drilled in serious professionalism and preparedness. Therefore, I thought it was a pretty mean thing to do. Yes, an unprofessional and crude, crass, all of that. All that probably stemmed from they couldn't catch them dance steps. So, you know, the stuff that they could do, which was acting, they tried to embarrass you. Boy, let me calm down because I am really reading this book with a lot of feeling today. This actor would know that I had important lines to say that day, yet he would make these really crazy faces to distract me. I felt it was more than inconsiderate and unfair. Or maybe, I don't know, you know, being on a set with the same people every day, you know, maybe it was a stress reliever for him to do that. I've heard that actors will eat onions or something, you know, totally gross before a kissing scene or something, you know, to play a joke on the other actors. Is it pretty, like Lindsay Lohan said, is it pretty bitchy? Yeah, but maybe they called it fun. Who knows? Much later, Marlon Brando would tell me that people used to do that to him all the time. The problems on the set were really few and far between, and it was great working with Diana so closely. She's such a beautiful, talented woman. Doing this movie together was very special for me. I love her very much. I have always loved her very much. Okay, we see the diamonds you dropping, Mike. We reading between the lines. Because the last chapter you said she was your homie lover friend. Now you saying that you have loved her very much, always. The whole WIZ period was a time of stress and anxiety. Even though I was enjoying myself, I remember July 4th of that year very well because I was on the beach at my brother Jermaine's house. See, Jermaine got him a beach house with Haza. about a half a block away along the waterfront. Oh, a waterfront mansion? Go ahead. I was messing around in the surf and all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. No air, nothing. I asked myself, what is wrong? I tried not to panic, but I ran back into the house to find Jermaine, who took me to the hospital. It was wild. You right, because we could have lost you before Thriller. We could have lost Mike on the waterfront at Jermaine's house. And you know who we would have blamed? Jermaine's ass. We would have blamed him because he was not out there with Mike. I'm glad Mike got up and ran in there. A blood vessel had burst in my lung. It has never reoccurred, although I used to feel little pinches and jerks in there that were probably my imagination. I later learned that this condition was related to pleurisy. Pleurisy is something to have to do with your lungs becoming like inflamed or swollen or blocked or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think it's like an inflammation of something that when it expands, it causes pain. So I don't know if it expands and blocks your breathing or if it causes so much pain you feel like you can't breathe. I don't know. It was suggested by my doctor that I try to take things a little slower, but my schedule would not permit it. Hard work continued to be the name of the game. That is horrible that you can't even take a damn break for a health crisis. That they just working the shit out of this man. As much as I liked the old Wizard of Oz, this new script, which differed from the Broadway production in scope rather than spirit, asked more questions than the original movie and answered them too. The atmosphere of the old movie was that of a Magic Kingdom, sort of a fairy tale. Our movie, on the other hand, had sets based on realities that kids could identify with, like schoolyards, subway stations, and the real neighborhood that our Dorothy came from. I still enjoy seeing The Wiz and reliving the experience. I am especially fond of the scene where Diana asks, "What am I afraid of?" Don't know what I'm made of, because I felt that way many times, even during the good moments of my life. Oh, Mike. Mike's second guessing everything. I wish he was here so I could just hug him. She sings about overcoming fear and walking straight and tall. She knows, and the audience knows, that no threat of danger can hold her back. My character had plenty to say and to learn. I was propped up on my pole with a bunch of crows laughing at me while I sang, "You Can't Win." I love that song. We have the soundtrack. I still have it, the record. The song was about humiliation and helplessness, something that so many people have felt at one time or another, and the feeling that there are people out there who don't actively hold you back as much as they work quietly on your insecurities so that you can hold yourself back. Sound like what they did to you when they told you that you was embarrassing them. The script was clever and showed me pulling bits of information and quotations out of my straw. The script was clever and showed me pulling bits of information and quotations out of my straw while not really knowing how to use them. My straw contained all the answers, but I didn't know the questions. The great difference between the two Wizard movies was that all the answers are given to Dorothy by the Good Witch and by her friends in Oz in the original, while in our version, Dorothy comes to her own conclusions. Her loyalty to her three friends and her courage in fighting Elvina in that amazing sweatshop scene made Dorothy a memorable character. Diana's singing and dancing and acting have stayed with me ever since. And so has yours. The whole thing. If you haven't seen The Wiz, go look at it now. Well, wait till you finish the rest of this and then go look at it. Because I'd take The Wiz over The Wizard of Oz any day. Diana's singing and dancing and acting have stayed with me ever since. She was a perfect Dorothy. After the evil witch had been defeated, the sheer joy of our dancing took over. To dance with Diana in that movie was like an abridged version of my own story. My knock-kneed walk and Bigfoot spin were me in the early days. Our tabletop dance in the sweatshop scene was where we were right then. Everything was onward and upward. When I told my brothers and father I had gotten this part, they thought it might be too much for me, but the opposite was true. The WIZ gave me new inspiration and strength. The question became what to do with those things. How could I harness them? And he's right. But the WIZ, we all love the WIZ. We felt so good when we left that as a child, going to see that and seeing everybody look like us. And it was in, like he said, in New York, there were places that you recognized. There were places that you could go and see that, or you could see in the movie, because I have relatives there, that you could go there, and you could have seen things in the movie that were actually places that you could go. So it was very relatable. And just dancing and singing and some of the things that the quotes that they made, and everything was just very relatable. So I would pick that movie over The Wiz any day. And we all were happy when we left the movie theater. I was a child, but everyone was happy. I don't know anyone that saw that I know that doesn't like that movie. And who knew Rick Ross was in the movie? I'm joking. But watch the movie and then you tell me who you think I'm talking about. As I was asking myself what I wanted to do next, another man and I were traveling parallel paths that would converge on the set of The Wiz. We were in Brooklyn rehearsing one day, and we were reading our parts out loud to one another. I had thought that learning lines would be the most difficult thing I'd ever do, but I was pleasantly surprised. Everyone had been kind, assuring me that it was easier than I thought, and it was. We were doing the crow scene that day. The other guys wouldn't have even had their heads visible in this scene because they'd be in crow costumes. They seemed to know their parts backward and forward. I studied mine too, but I hadn't said them aloud more than once or twice. The directions called for me to pull a piece of paper from my straw and read it. It was a quote. The author's name, Socrates, was printed at the end. I had read Socrates, but I had never pronounced his name. So I said Socrates, because that's the way I had always assumed it was pronounced. There was a moment's silence before I heard someone whisper, Socrates. I looked over at this man I vaguely recognized. He was not one of the actors, but he seemed to belong there. I remember thinking he looked very self-confident and had a friendly face. I smiled, a little embarrassed at having mispronounced the name, and thanked him for his help. His face was naggingly familiar, and I was suddenly sure that I had met him before. He confirmed my suspicions by extending his hand. Quincy Jones, I'm doing the score. That's the end of chapter 3, and he formally meets Quincy Jones, who does Off the Wall and Thriller, I believe. So that's weird that Mike liked all types of music and he didn't really know who Quincy Jones was. Like he didn't recognize him, or he didn't hear that he was doing the score to the movie that you're working on, that you're filming. So that's kind of weird, but maybe that just speaks to everything that he had going on, all the stuff that was going on. But what did you guys think of that chapter? Now, I got a little emotional reading it because some of that stuff, now that you know how the outcome is, just kind of pisses you off. So even in 1988, when he wrote this was in the 70s, so he was writing it after it had happened. But there's so much more that happened after 1988 that hadn't happened yet. So reading this, is it gets a little emotional. For me, at least. I'm sorry if it came across as a little too much for you guys, but if you want to read it without the commentary, you can always pay for it with Audible. So if it's a little too emotional for you, and you just want to hear the story without the commentary, you can always pay for it on Audible and listen to it there. But here, we're going to have feeling, we're going to have our opinions, and we're going to read with some type of emotion. Because why not? You know, who wants to listen to something just bland? And I would love to hear what you have to say. That's what the comments are for. So there's a lot happening in this chapter. It moved pretty fast. It moved from Motown to the WIZ, which he went from a child to an adult within, one chapter. So I don't know. I guess the next chapter, since he ends this with Quincy Jones, will be more of thriller, not thriller, off the wall, and then on to thriller, and then the Pepsi incident and the victory tour, because I think it ends after the victory tour. So I don't know what you guys think. I think it's a lot of pressure for Michael to have. I think the record company, the record business is some BS, but I don't know what we would do without him. I'm sure if we never had it, if you don't have something, then you don't know how it is to live without it. But now that we have it, and you see all of the sacrifices that these artists make, and then for our enjoyment, which is a two-hand sword, because without us, they don't make money. Without them, we don't have entertainment. So, a double-edged sword, like people say. But you see how these artists now are coming out and speaking out. They didn't do that back then. And if they did, they didn't do it on such a public platform, and they didn't have control over their platforms. They would speak to someone and it would be edited 1,000 times before we saw it or heard it. So it just seems like a lot for a child to have to deal with, and then to see that he had to stifle not only his talents but his aspirations for the comfort of others. The mic that we got was stifled mic. Man. So the mic that we get that let's say make it sizzle for 20 minutes and we screaming for him while he's standing there, that's stifled mic? Wow. I don't think we ever gonna see anything like Michael Jackson ever again. And not because of the talent. Well, yeah, because of the talent, but because of all of this that goes into making him, that doesn't happen anymore. Times are different. And it's no fault of these new artists. They just lived in a different time. And there are different values. And these companies see an easier way for you to make money, for you to act up and show your tail and get arrested and be in all these nefarious activities and, beat your spouse and be on drugs and publicly, and all this kind of stuff. Back in the day, yeah, they had their vices, but we didn't see it. So the superstar image was very much an image. When you actually met someone, it's like, oh, he's not as tall as I thought. She's not as pretty as I thought. Their voice sounds funny. They're not as attractive. It's kind of like, wow, because the only image that you had was the one that their bosses, whatever, it was music, it was movies, whatever, was the image that they gave you of them, and the lies that they told you about their life and how happy they were and how they get along with everybody and all of this. And that's not really, what's going on. But I think we understood that it was two different lives, because I don't know, we just could see it, that it was two different lives. And then you would run into these people. You would see these people. You knew people that worked with them. So you knew that the stuff was bullshit. And you knew that was just a put on. But we accepted it because we knew that there was a difference, that there was a on program mic and it was a at home mic. We knew that he didn't walk around like that all day with sunglasses on and the glove and the glitter jackets and shit. We knew that he didn't do that. We knew that that was on program. Like they say, you're going to be on program. Go get your hair done, put your shoes on. Get your church shoes. Iron your suit. Put the slip on under that dress. You're going to be on program. We knew that that was program Mike. We didn't know what at home Mike was, but we knew it wasn't that. So it's just difficult to, well, not difficult, it's just sombering, I'll put it like that, to read of his struggles with his creativity and his ambitions to make everybody else comfortable. But anyway, that is the end of chapter 3, and I hope that you have enjoyed this and you have your own opinions and that you are learning something from this, and if all else fails, that you just had fun listening, that you laughed, put a smile on your face for, you know, the time that you spent with me here. That's all that matters. And join us for chapter 4 on The Readback. Thank you for listening.